Parasitic plant interactions with their host. What is a parasitic plant? A parasitic plant is a plant that derives some or all its nutritional requirements from another plant or fungi. There are more than 4,000 known species that exist, and they make up 1% of angiosperms. Here are 6 examples of parasitic plants to your right. There are 2 types of parasitic plants. The first are hemiparasitic, which obtain some of its nutrients from their host. The second are holoparasitic, which obtains all of its nutrients from their host. Hemiparasitic plants are green, meaning they contain chlorophyll and are able to photosynthesize. But why don't they? It's because it's much more efficient to take from another plant than to photosynthesize their own. Unlike hemiparasitic plants, holoparasitic plants are red, yellow, orange, and white, and they are unable to photosynthesize. Hemiparasitic plants have leaves and roots, while holoparasitic plants lack them or they're undeveloped.
Take a look at the developmental and mechanical processes. First, we'll be talking about seed germination and host detection. How do parasitic plants sense the presence of a potential host for germination? Dormant parasitic plant seedlings are on the lookout for chemical signals called stragolactones, which are plant hormones that act as communication signals for plant growth and development. When stragolactone is released by a host, it can be perceived by stragolactone receptors on the dormant seedling. When this happens, chemical signaling disrupts seedling dormancy and stimulates germination. This differs between the 2 types of seeds. Obligate seeds require stragolactone to germinate and are unable to survive independently from their host, while facultative seeds are able to germinate independently and requires host attachment for sustenance. Now, what happens after germination? After a parasitic plant undergoes germination, it begins to produce Haustorium-inducing factors, or HIFs. These active Haustorium-inducing factors bind to compatible receptors and activates the formation of the Haustorium. As the Haustorium grows, it secretes virulence factors and effector proteins that further establish its connection to the host. And finally, once this vascular connection is established, nutrient uptake can begin. This is the case when a parasitic plant is compatible with this host, though. Host plants have also developed defense mechanisms to prevent parasitic plants from hijacking them. Parasitic plant-derived molecules can be recognized by the host immune system and activate defense mechanisms. More specifically, pathogen-associated molecular patterns called PAMPES may trigger PAMP-triggered immunity, or PTI, through the recognition by PAMP recognition receptors, or PRRs. This leads to a plant immunity response, like the induction of immunity-related genes or deposition of radical compounds, which stops the parasitic invasion and causes necrosis to parasitic structures. In this case, the parasitic plant is not compatible with this host.
Haustorium formation. After the plant germinates, it begins to attach itself to the host. It first swells up to maximize surface area with the host, then it secretes mucin or adhesive proteins to attach itself. Some species coil around its host or have helical hairs to attach itself. On the diagram to the right, you can see how the plant attaches itself to the host. After the host attaches itself, it secretes wall-degrading enzymes to weaken the host's tissue. Then, specialized intrusive cells develop at the haustorium tip, which is then used to penetrate the epidermis and the cortex to reach the host's vascular system. Nutrient uptake and growth. After it penetrates through, it forms a bridge connecting their xylems and redirects the host's water, nutrients, and sometimes genes to the parasite. The diagram on the right shows this bridge. The parasite then uses those nutrients to grow and develop itself. And after a while, the parasite is ready to reproduce. First, the plant flowers, often flowering at the same time as their host, as some parasites require host-derived hormones in order to flower. Next, the flowers are pollinated. Some parasites are able to mimic decaying flesh to attract carrion flies, while others produce small inconspicuous flowers adapted for wind and insect pollination. After the plants are pollinated, they develop seeds. Since parasitic plants require a host to survive, they have a high seed output to maximize their chances of encountering a host. They disperse their seeds in various ways, such as by wind, animal, or ballistically, where their seeds then lay dormant, waiting for its next host.
So moving on, we will be talking about biological significance. One thing that a parasitic plant does is nutrient cycling and distribution. The parasitic plant uses their hostorium to penetrate through the host's tissue and then connect to the host's vasculature to extract water and nutrients. And because they keep taking away the water and nutrients, the host is like either stunted growth or slowly dying. This will lead to increased litter fall. Another thing that a parasitic plant does is regulate plant populations. Since a parasitic plant wants the best for their nutrient and water supply, they always target the dominant species or whatever is the best in the population. And because they're suppressing the dominant species, this will help promote diversity. Moving on to host-specific interactions. One thing that a parasitic plant does is to be able to detect whatever is the best host for them. For the host defense suppression, the parasitic plant is able to um essentially like lower the host's guard down by secreting effector proteins to interfere with the host's like defense signaling pathways. And then their Hostoria formation, when attached, the parasite secretes um, cell wall degrading enzymes to penetrate through the host tissue. For host signal perception, the parasitic plants perceive and respond to host derived molecular signals to regulate their own development, such as stragolactones and quinones. Another thing is host parasite communication. The parasites and hosts engage in molecular exchanges that shape their interactions, such as transferring mRNAs, proteins, and small RNAs to alter gene expression. The parasitic plants and the hosts have gene to gene coevolution. The the host has to evolve their immune system, their ability to block off the parasites, while the parasites have to evolve to penetrate through that immune system that the host is trying to develop. Some agricultural challenges that we face against the parasitic plants to this day are crop yield losses from parasitic weeds such as striga and orobanche. With parasitic plants, we have to take effective control measures such as phytosanitary measures, crop rotation, soil solarization, biocontrol agents, and herbicide applications. We could also develop resistant crops either by breeding or genetic engineering techniques.
Now here is our references slide, and finally our last slide. Thank you guys so much for listening, and if you have any questions, please let us know.